You never show up ours. You recognize it. I was here.
Well, then I was here. My name is in a minute, so I know. The only reason.
Yeah, I know. That's about how I am. How are things going?
Oh, good. I just got back from real stuff.
No.
No, I'm state president this year.
Oh, so what's this guy's number?
Yeah, last year I was past president.
That's right. Okay.
I'm in. I was out.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is important. Why? This is me, first of all.
Oh, Charles, no? He's a pretty sharp guy.
Sometimes when I see him, like on the street.
Margaret? He's right here.
I read his life.
Well, he started his comments today. We were talking. Just
Is that the way that works?
Our political. He started his comments. He said, there's too many Republican representatives.
No.
Democratic representatives, not enough Americans.
What they want to see.
You did it back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like.
He's going to be here. We're going to have him up here the 1st and 2nd of June.
Sure.
What will you do?
Well, we're planning on at least one event, two things. We're going to have an RPAC auction, and we'll probably have a ticket or something. Try to get some people to give us a Well, you guys.
Denny's always really active.
Well, talk to some of the people who don't ordinarily come.
That's what I'm
I know. It's boiled down.
Yeah.
I think
go all the way to
beyond.
I want
Yeah.
The whole area.
and I don't want this guy to have
Yeah, I know.
Well, what can I say? I mean, Kevin Andrews.
and then I want this right here like they run up in
See, well,
Thank you.
We can have people all over.
because I don't want, I'd like to be there and a big boss. All of a sudden,
Oh, yeah. Oh, so that's three. Let's figure that out. We can talk about it. You want them to do that, so he can drive up here.
yeah, I mean, that usually needs to be there for the sewer.
For the sewer line.
But
Okay.
no,
No,
but that way this guy
I'm
doesn't.
not quite sure what we're talking about.
He is, whatever, he is.
Should we vice decision?
What are they getting out of that? Okay,
Touche.
I said a few days.
Who's what where? Taylor? Oh, that's Taylor. He's on his board now. Yes. Started having family.
I did not know that.
And, let's see, am I still on here?
Yeah.
Oh, man. These aren't alphabetical?
Ben, how are you? Good.
but
They
I
put me on here a couple months ago. They must have taken me back. Sign in. There I am. You might be after the name. If they think you've come more than once. But I have no idea how to log on. Yeah. No.
Well, we've got a new one.
Oh, that part.
Little button off to the side.
Stick a bead in here that says,
The usable and taxable lot sizes are reflected on the plan. Right.
yeah. This is the Zoom view. Probably look at these all day. Probably read them. Oh, really? Yeah. I want Tony to address the public comment that it looks like a draftsman with a straight edge and a pencil. Huh? Yeah. I don't think I'm allowed to see them from up here, but.
Oh, good. Wondering about that. I had some stuff here.
I'll get anything. Oh, it didn't matter. Because you don't normally come to meetings. Maybe I like it.
Call the meeting to order. This is the Wednesday, February 4th, 2009 Platting Board meeting. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Roll.
Here.
Taylor.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Here.
Craig.
Here.
Moses.
Here.
Plunkett.
Here.
Dolphy. Story.
Here.
Next item on the agenda is approval of action summaries. We have action summaries from December the 22nd, December the 29th, January the 5th, January the 7th, January the 12th, and January the 20th. Can I have a motion for approval, please? Mr. Clark, may I have a second? Ms. Plunkett, seconds. Is there any discussion? Is there any opposition to the motion? Seeing none, the action summaries are approved. And next is the approval of minutes. Excuse me. And we have minutes from January the 7th, 2009. May I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Krieger, and a second? Mr. Clark. Is there any discussion? Is there any opposition to the motion? Seeing none, the minutes of January 7th are approved. We have no special order of business for this evening and nothing on the consent agenda. No old business and one case on the new business part of the agenda, case S11680-2, Creekview Estates. Could we have the staff presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a 26.6-acre subdivision of existing Tract B, Rexview Terrace subdivision, and the plat proposes to create 11 lots in the R9 zoning district. Vacation of the cul-de-sac bulb of Wills Way is requested. The cul-de-sac bulb is located entirely within the property that is the subject of the current petition site. A variance is also requested that requires the lot width to depth ratio of 1:3 required by AMC 218300. This preliminary plat and a petition to rezone to the R6 zoning district was originally reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. It was an 18-lot preliminary plat. It was proposed to be designed as a cluster housing subdivision, and that was reviewed on September 29th, 2008. The rezone was not approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that plat was returned for redesign because the design of the plat was based on the R6 land use regulations. So the plat was amended to, in accordance with the R9 district regulations, and resubmitted for the Platting Board's review. The plat before the board is a conventional subdivision under the R9 zoning district land use regulations. The lot area and widths meet the R9 zoning district, and the subdivision lot design standards are generally met with one exception, and that is the subject of the variance, the 1:3 lot depth to width ratio for lots 6 through 9 and lot 11. The proposed density of the subdivision is 4 dwelling units per acre, which is less than the development the density of the development in the surrounding subdivision, which ranges from 4.5 to 1.3 dwelling units per acre. There are significant environmental constraints that are impacting the property that affect the development of the subdivision, and that is variable and steep topography, wetlands, drainages, and streams. Little Rabbit Creek does flow through this property from east to west, and it basically cuts the property into a north half and a south half. There's also a stream in the southwest corner of the petition site, and that, along with Little Rabbit Creek, an 85-foot setback has been provided for the stream in the southwest corner, as well as Little Rabbit Creek. Now, the stream in the southwest corner is associated with wetlands and will probably fall under the jurisdiction of the Alaska District Corps of Engineers. The Little Rabbit Creek does not have any associated wetlands. The Corps of Engineers does not require the 85-foot stream protection setback. This is something that the property owner is proposing. However, it is not required. Because this is being provided with this plat, does not set a precedent in that it cannot be used in other subdivisions as a requirement if the 85-foot setback is not required in other subdivisions that come before the Platting Board for review. The petitioner is choosing to provide it with this one, but as mentioned, it really is not required by the Corps of Engineers, nor is it required by Title 21. Title 21 under AMC 21-45-210 requires a 25-foot stream protection and maintenance setback either side of the creek. And that is requested to be shown on the plat as well, and it is covered by a recommended condition of approval. The property is steeply sloped. Generally, the overall slope on outside of the creek corridor ranges between 10 to 11%. The steepest slopes are along the creek corridor. On the north side, the slopes range between 10 and 20%. On the south side of the creek, they range from 30 to 60% slopes. As mentioned, there are undesignated wetlands. They are not shown on current municipal wetlands plans. To that effect, that the owner commissioned 2 studies to be produced to review the site, survey the site for wetlands. One was performed by Shannon and Wilson, who identified the wetlands in the southwest corner of the property. The other one was performed in 2008 by Restoration Science and Engineering. They confirmed the wetlands in the southwest corner, and they also identified 2 other wetland areas. All 3 of these wetlands are shown on the plat that affect lots 9, 7, and 6. Watershed Management, in response to a request from the petitioner, did look at the drainages that impact this property. Drainage is collected from properties to the east, also properties to the southwest. Drainage flows from Robin Hood Drive, traveling along East 156th Avenue and outfalling to the wetlands at the southwest corner of the property. There is also a drainage along the north side of the traveled way, which is known as Cobblestone Hill Road, and that is directed to the petition site by a culvert under Wills Way. From that point, there's a drainage channel for only about 20 feet. From that point on, it is a non-integrated. There is no defined drainage channel for the surface runoff to the Little Rabbit Creek for that drainage from the east. The access to this property, the Alaska Department of Transportation does own and control access to Rabbit Creek Road. Currently, there is one driveway that does exist. It did serve the former homestead that is located on the north side of the creek. Any driveway permits that would be issued to access onto Rabbit Creek Road would have to be issued by the Alaska Department of Transportation in their right-of-way office. Now, the preliminary plat is showing a 30-foot driveway easement that is proposed to serve lots 1, 2, and 3. Comments from the Alaska Department of Transportation state that they could accept 2 driveway access points to serve lots 4, 5, and 11. But the location of those driveways will have to Rabbit Creek Road will have to be resolved with the right-of-way office in ADOT. And there are conditions that address that as well. East 156th Avenue is a municipally owned road. There are 2 20-foot wide access easements shown extending to 156th Avenue, and they will be shared by the lots on the south side of the creek. The Municipal Traffic Department did request a note to the plat stating that driveway access to East 156th Avenue would be limited to 2 driveway points from this subdivision. There's been reference made to the traveled way, and it is shown on the plat. It's known as Cobblestone Hill Road. It enters the petition site midway along the south property boundary. It travels north for a distance that I didn't measure, and then extends east through Rexview Terrace, Lot 3 within Rexview Terrace. That Cobblestone Hill Road is the access. That provides access to the 3 dwelling units in Goodvina Estates subdivision to the east. And that is a pioneer road that has existed for some time, and it's due to a very steep topography, primarily along East 156th in the general vicinity of the intersection with Wills Way. That's a very steep topography, and I understand the petitioner's representative will have some a chart to tell you how steep that road would be if it was to be improved. So there is the Lot 1A in Rexview Terrace also uses that Cobblestone Hill Road, as well as there is one lot in the southwest based on aerial photography in Golden View Heights that uses that access road. So there's about 5 developed lots that actually depend on that access road. Both project management and engineering, as well as the traffic department, do request a common public use easement along that Cobblestone Hill Road. And the traffic department did specify it should be 30 feet wide, and that is addressed in the conditions of approval as well. There is also a requirement for a trail easement. It would have to be on the north side of Little Rabbit Creek. The width and location of this trail easement needs to be resolved with the non-motorized trails coordinator, and that is addressed in a condition of approval as well. This subdivision is to be served with on-site utilities, individual wells, and individual septic systems. The lots on the north side of Little Rabbit Creek will have conventional septic systems. The lots on the south side of the creek will also have individual septic systems. The drainage fields, however, for these lots, these 5 lots, will all be proposed to be located on Lot 8. but they are five individual absorption fields. They will have 5 points of absorption on Lot 8, and the preliminary plat does show 20-foot wide sewer line easements to protect the service lines to lots 6, 7, 9, and 10. They are to be individually maintained by the homeowners that are served by their own individual septic system. It is not a cluster system that was proposed in the previous preliminary plat. There is an advantage to having the individual septic absorption fields because they will have 5 points of absorption rather than having 1 point of absorption that would be provided with a cluster or a community septic system. So that allows for a greater ability to absorb the effluent from the drainage fields. There were revised conditions of approval that were placed on the board on the table tonight, and there are a few conditions that I do want to address, and I understand will be addressed further by the petitioner's representative as to the technicalities behind the engineering of these requirements. And basically, condition 13A and B were revised. Originally, PM&E was looking at having East 156th Avenue improved to municipal standards from the intersection with Golden View Drive to the intersection with Wills Way. However, there is a significant slope, and this is also a road that is identified on the draft hillside development plan that will be a primary neighborhood collector. That plan is not yet adopted, but the traffic department is attempting to get improvement of 156th from Golden View to a point east, which I'm not familiar with how far east they're proposing to improve 156th. At a minimum, it would have to be to Windsong Drive to the east of this petition site. And therefore, that road can currently not be constructed to municipal standards. The handout that is provided, that was laid on the table tonight, shows that the traveled way known as Cobblestone Hill Road provides a more level access than could be achieved by trying to improve that very steep hill at the intersection with Wills Way. That handout shows the slope of the of this improvement and of 156th Avenue to the intersection with Cobblestone Hill Road. The turning radius is also going to be realigned and rounded for a safer turning radius to serve the properties to the east. There's 2 issues with the design criteria manual. Currently, the design criteria manual requires a roadway of lesser slope. It also requires that roads be constructed along the center line of the right-of-way. Well, there is a stream on the north half of East 156th Avenue. There is the ability to obtain variances from the design criteria manual, and that certainly would be a compelling reason to, to entertain a variance to allow the improvements to be made along the south side of the center line. Also, variance can be entertained for the required slope of that roadway improvement, and there are significant conditions. Now, that's not a variance that is approved by the Platting Board or even requested. That would be reviewed and approved by the municipal engineer that enforces the design criteria manual. I was just pointing that out, that that is a possibility. The condition was amended to just require construction of 156th Avenue to the intersection with Cobblestone Hill Road, and then to level out the turning radius of that Cobblestone Hill Road, and not to require construction of 156 beyond the intersection with Robin Hood Drive, because it could not possibly meet the municipal standards for road grade. Other than that, that was the main change to the conditions of approval. There is an additional condition to require, condition number 18, to require the driveway access points to Rabbit Creek Road to be approved by the Alaska Department of Transportation, as they have control over that right-of-way. In terms of the variance was found that it appeared to meet the standards for a variance. The cul-de-sac bulb has a slope of in excess of 85%. It is a sharp drop-off, could never be constructed to municipal standards. Project Management and Engineering is requesting that there be an alternate turnaround easement provided on Lot 6 if that cul-de-sac bulb is indeed vacated. The request for variance from the 3-to-1 lot depth to width ratio, that appeared to meet the 4 standards for granting a variance due to the special circumstances in terms of the sensitive environmental nature, the protections that are being continuing to be provided with this plat for Little Rabbit Creek, the wetlands, as well as the stream and the stream setbacks. These are large lots. The impact of the variance will not affect adjacent property, and due to the large size of the lots, it really will not be discernible from the casual viewer, and a significant portion of the lots are restricted due to that 85-foot creek setback. So therefore, the department does recommend approval of the request to vacate the Wills Way cul-de-sac bulb. It does recommend approval of the variance request for the 1-to-3 lot width to depth ratio, and does recommend approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to 18 conditions that were included in the handout that was presented to the Platting Board tonight. And thank you for allowing that presentation, and I failed to introduce municipal staff that are here that can answer specific questions. Mr. Dan Roth is on my left. He is with the on-site well water and wastewater services with the municipality. Mr. Don Kiefer, he is with Project Management and Engineering. And, of course, you all know Mr. Jerry Weaver, who is the supervisor of the Zoning and Platting Division. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Clark.
Through the chair, Margaret, I noted in our paperwork comments about the lot size, and I got out my trusty little calculator and found that the lot sizes actually reflect a much larger subdivision than we have here. And the concern I have is that this could be misleading to somebody purchasing the lots later on. So we need to get those. Do the lot boundaries also reflect going out to the middle of the easements, or they're just ending where they're supposed to end? Is that not correct?
Through the chair, Mr. Clark, the lot sizes, lot areas reflect 1/2 of the adjoining right-of-way, which is allowed in the R9 district regulations. For the final plat, the actual lot sizes within lot boundaries would have to be shown, along with a plat note stating that the R9 does allow calculation of 1/2 the adjoining right-of-way for lot area calculation. That would be needed for property appraisal and assessment value.
Through the chair, a follow-up. So that means that the final plat lot areas will reflect what's actually there for the buyer.
Through the chair, Mr. Clark, that is correct. The board could choose to put a condition to that effect to show the actual lot sizes within lot boundaries on the final plat if they chose to entertain that.
But that would not be necessary?
No, I think the lot sizes were placed here to show that based on the R9 district regulations, they did meet the R9 minimum lot size, but the actual lot size will be shown on the final plat.
My only concern is to make sure that people in the future, this is properly disclosed to buyers. So if that's already going to be addressed, I'm not concerned about it.
Mr. Krieger.
Through the chair, Ms. O'Brien, why was condition 5 about dedicating a temporary turnaround, why was that taken out of the revised conditions?
Through the chair, Mr. Krieger, that temporary turnaround was to be at or near the intersection with Wills Way. Through discussions with the project management and engineering this afternoon, it was determined that the extension to Wills Way could not really meet municipal standards. So the improvement to Cobblestone Hill Road they'll need to resolve whether they need to do any improvement to Cobblestone Hill Road to provide a fire access. The main reason for that turnaround was for emergency access. The safer access point is that traveled way known as Cobblestone Hill Road, so that will be whatever improvements are required for to provide a fire access, if they're required, to Cobblestone Hill Road would be resolved with project management and engineering.
Through the chair, so you don't need a temporary turnaround during the plat?
Through the chair, Mr. Krieger, not at 156th Avenue at the intersection with Wills Way, no.
Okay.
Because it's not going to be, no, we don't need it.
Okay. Another follow-up question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Are we concerned that the plat that we're looking at still suggests that there's going to be 18 lots and 3 tracks? Is that anything that we should be worried about?
Through the chair, Mr. Krieger, the plat we're looking at has 11 lots.
The one I'm looking at has 11 lots shown, but there's a note saying it's going to create 18 lots and 3 tracks. I think that's probably a holdover from when it was R6. I don't know whether that should be corrected or not.
Through the chair, are you looking at the revision notes, the second from the bottom, add access easement across lot 17?
No, last line in the title block.
That's a carryover, and it would need to be corrected on the final plat.
I had one other question, if I might. In the conditions, are we at all concerned about where the dedicated easement should be shown for that Willis Way property? I'm looking at condition number 6.
To the chair, Mr. Krieger, are you talking about the turnaround at the northern terminus? The design and the location of that will be resolved with the traffic department as well as project management and engineering and fire.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff? Ms. Taylor?
Through the chair, condition number 4 requires a 30-foot temporary public use easement for Cobblestone Hill Road, and a further condition requires construction of that to municipal standards. Is there any discussion on how a municipal standard road will fit into a 30-foot PUE on that steep of a grade?
Through the chair, Ms. Taylor, the 30-foot easement has to be placed over an existing roadway. What the engineer for the developer is going to be asked to do is show that that roadway right now is to a municipal standard, and if not, we're going to ask them to widen it to bring it up to a standard. But because it is a temporary and we're essentially fitting the easement over the existing improvement, we feel the 30-foot is adequate at this point.
Any other questions, staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. And during the public hearing, we're going to follow the procedure as outlined on the front of the agenda. The persons who wish to testify have time limits. The petitioner, who's next, will get 10 minutes. Rebuttal time may be reserved from that 10 minutes. A representative of groups, that's things like community councils and PTAs, have 5 minutes, and individuals get 3 minutes. After your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless you are questioned by the board, and then any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action that the board takes, and that appeal procedure is outlined on the front of the agenda. So, can we hear from the petitioner's representative, please?
Madam Chairman, members of the board, my name is Tony Hoffman. I work for Land Tech, and we're representing the petitioner on this case before you tonight. With me tonight is Jeff Regnat, back in the audience. He's the petitioner. Dave Grenier, Triad Engineering, is a project engineer, and Jeff Carness, Carness Engineering, sitting in the back. He's responsible for the design and the implementation of the septic systems. We appreciate staff's work on this. This has been a long time coming. We've, of course, been before the other board, and they didn't quite think that the increased density we asked for was appropriate for the property. So we're back before you tonight asking for the allowed density under the current zoning. We have read through the revised conditions, and we did work with project management and engineering this afternoon and talk to them about the road conditions and what is buildable and what isn't, and I think we can do a pretty good understanding and clarification of the issue, and I'm going to put a graphic up to explain this to you. I think you have this graphic that Margaret handed out, and this applies to items 13A and B, the two road conditions for improvement. Why isn't this working tonight? Over here? Oh, no. Where? Towards me? Oh. There? Okay. Now, condition 13A is, as written originally, the conditions were rather confusing to us, and we needed clarification, so we understood what planning was talking about and what the conditions were reading. Originally, staff's and project management's concept was to have us develop and build this piece of road on 156 to Rose Way, and to put a temporary turnaround easement, and that's the condition that got deleted here, allowing for fire turnaround. The problem is that this is on the long-range transportation plan of the municipality, and to build this piece of road would serve zero purpose. As when they do build this road, when the municipality builds this road, because it's on the long-range transportation plan, and they build it to municipal code, anything we built here would have to be ripped out, because the grade allowances coming down the hill would not work with anything we developed in here. It made absolutely zero sense for us to try to build something here that wouldn't stay in an extension of 156 or improvement or any build out of 156 in the future. It would be a road to nowhere. So what we did was we talked to the municipality this afternoon, and we talked about to clarify the conditions, and what we agreed, and we believe it's a good solution for the neighborhood as well as the development. Item 13A speaks directly to East 156, and we're talking about this stretch of road. And there are possible areas where it's substandard, maybe the ditches aren't wide enough. We're going to develop that to municipal standards to Cobblestone Hill Drive. Then Cobblestone Hill Road, which is this road that we all know about, this is the road that we agree to improve that to a standard to help the neighbors as they call it, the luge run down the hill. We want to help flatten it, widen it to the best of our abilities in the existing roadbed, and to widen this intersection, and to do what we can to create a more easily negotiated curve here, and to help them get up the hill. This is a situation that's existed for years, and this is the best solution we can provide for this stretch of road. We don't necessarily agree that we believe it's partly a municipal problem because it's a condition that's perpetuated and been allowed to stay. But we believe this is the best solution in the stretch of road that we have to improve it to a standard that will help the existing roadway and the existing users utilize the road safely. One caveat we have with both of these conditions is, and I got into this with the DCM, the Design Criteria Manual, they have these grade specifications, and the existing roadway in both of these areas exceed the existing grade that's allowed, and we can't fix that. So Margaret basically addressed this properly. We just wanted it to be put on the record that what we're utilizing is the existing roadway. We're not going to try to change the grade because we can't. So we will need a variance from basically Jerry Hansen at the municipality and traffic, as well as PNE, to allow us to build on the existing roadbed out of the specification as far as design grade. We can't change that. This is a road that was platted, and this is a road that was built out of the specification. We can't change it. So those are the things we wanted to put on record and clarify as far as the road improvements. Other than that, we believe Margaret's done a really good job on the conditions, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
You have 4 minutes and 15 seconds left for rebuttal. Are there any questions of Mr. Hoffman? Mr. Krieger.
Through the chair, Mr. Hoffman, I need some guidance here. You're saying that you want Cobblestone Hill Road to be improved to something other than municipal standards, right?
Regarding the grade, we can't change the grade. That is a municipal standard we cannot adhere to.
Well, that's a DCM issue, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
What about, the condition currently reads improved to municipal standard.
Right.
But I thought your remarks were going to why you didn't want to do that because it was a road to nowhere.
We agree that it needs to be widened and ditched to municipal standards for fire safety, and that those standards can be adhered to, and we can do what we can with the existing roadway in that regard. We just can't bring in 15 feet of fill to try to make grade on it properly to meet the municipal specifications, particularly with the short run we have, because as you come over here where Cobblestone Hill continues, it's 15%. It's even steeper. We can't fix the grade on the road. It's the same scenario here on 156. But the width, the ditches, those issues, road condition, we can meet the DCM requirements for that, and we intend to.
So you're not asking for any change in the language of 13B as it currently reads?
No. No.
Follow-up question, or a different question. Should this Cobblestone Hill Road be shown on the preliminary plat? I Maybe I'm looking at the wrong plat, but what I got in my packet doesn't have cobblestone.
Well, it's because you have a black and white copy and it doesn't show up very well.
This is the one I got. Is it on there somewhere? Okay.
Yeah, that is the problem with when you run 100 black and whites. What you're looking at, and it's more, we darkened it up on this. This is the same thing you're looking at right here. It's the exact same plat.
Okay.
And it's just not clearly shown, unfortunately. There you go.
Thank you. Mr. Clark?
Thank you.
Through the chair, is it my understanding that when 156th is put through, the people that are now using cobblestone will be using 156th?
That would be the assumption, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so would it be advisable to put in here that this temporary easement goes away?
I believe that the way it's worded, they call it a temporary public use easement. That is the inference that, and we could put additional, if you look on 16G, the new item 16G, it's a plat note. They address that. There may be other places in the conditions where it's not addressed so clearly. But the way they worded here, the temporary public use easement along the travel way known as Cobblestone Hill Road will be automatically vacated.
Right.
And that is the inference when we say temporary.
Any other questions for Mr. Hoffman? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone else that wishes to testify in the Creekview Estates case?
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Jan Wills. We live on property abutting the proposed plat on the east. Having lived on this property for over 35 years, we feel we are very familiar with the topography and the very poor drainage in this area. There is water running on Wills Way and Cobblestone Hill Road year-round, creating serious problems with glaciation in the winter and making driving often very treacherous. These problems are common throughout this area, and you will see in the first and the third photographs before you the results of clear cutting on a lot just south of this proposed plat on Golden View Drive. Attempts to solve similar drainage issues have met with failure, as you can see in the photograph taken on 164th Avenue of the water coming out of a frozen manhole. The third picture is an example of the glaciation that occurs on this property. This picture shows the southwest corner of the property on the corner of Golden View Drive and East 156th. There are identified wetlands and poor drainage throughout this plat on the south side of Little Rabbit Creek, and we request that you place in the plat notes a requirement that no permitting be done unless the property owner has shown that they can control the drainage satisfactorily on their own property. We have no objection to the vacation of the cul-de-sac at the north end of Wills Way. As has been noted, this could not be built on that very steep slope. We also request that the plat include a trail easement on the north side of Little Rabbit Creek that connects to the trail easement in the Goodvina subdivision to the east. And finally, we would like to ask that the board review the plat before it is finalized to guarantee that all conditions that you place upon it be accurately in place. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Will? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify?
Good evening, members of the board. My name is David Sterling. I'm representing the Rabbit Creek Community Council tonight. The chair asked that I present our council's comments that were written in a January 14th letter submitted January 14th. I also happen to live across the street on the corner of 156th and Golden View, so I have some personal insights into this land, and I've lived there for 25 years. This plat's a lot better than the last attempt. The developer and his representatives presented this plat at our January meeting, and we were able to ask quite a few questions. We had 30 residents that were attending. The board voted on recommendations and that were submitted in the letter. We support this neighborhood septic systems with adequate reserves areas identified. These systems are successful elsewhere in the U.S. and recommended in the draft Hillside District Plan. Also, however, the responsibility for maintenance of these systems must be clearly defined to ensure their long-term success. Second item is we support the vacation of part of Willis Ray at the cul-de-sac. We offer that the Platting Board may wish to consider a pedestrian access from Willis Way down into the creek, into Little Rabbit Creek, where that former cul-de-sac was going to be. So we're just suggesting an easement there, pedestrian easement. We urge that the public easement be platted along the traditional road known as Cobblestone Hill Road until 156th is upgraded to allow access by the residents. As you know, cobblestone is the only access for several homes. The topography seems to be a challenge. I don't really fully understand what the new proposal is that you were talking about, that they went over with project management today. But by going up to that road, you'll see what a challenge it is to meet municipal standards. And wording of an attempt to meet municipal standards probably needs to be a little stronger. Drainage is a huge issue on the hillside, especially along the east side of Golden View Drive, from this plat extending south for some distance. Mrs. Willis had mentioned photographs about drainage. There's an example of across from Golden View Middle School, a lot a few hundred feet south of this area that was clear-cut a few years ago. The groundwater expressed itself as a massive mud flow that filled the ditches with thick brown sludge that migrated down to the Little Rabbit Creek before it could be stopped. As a result of that, one half of this 2-acre lot has been placed off limits for building. And you have the same potential problem here with the amount of water on this lot, on these lots. It is unclear that what drainage plans would work best here. We've seen many plans made, but few seem to work. We urge that each lot have a drainage plan that is proven to work and does not result in increased runoff, and also takes care of a glaciation problem that's very bad in that area. We support the creek setbacks and urge that the plat have the restrictions be placed on each lot. We would like to see all of the conditions that you make on the subdivision be shown as plat notes for each and every lot, because that appears to be the only way to legally bind the development. We support the platting of a public pedestrian easement in the creek setback and its connections to a similar easement upstream. Platting these easements one by one as each plat comes before you, the Platting Board, is supported by the Comprehensive 2020 Plan, Policy Number 55. Eventually, this effort will result in a neighborhood access for desirable wilderness settings along that creek similar to what's going on in the Rabbit Creek Greenbelt. A bit of technical detail in case you have questions. A narrow unpaved path that are built on slopes that go with the contour do not cause erosion. In fact, trail designers prefer trails be built on slopes versus flat ground to avoid pooling of water. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Sterling? Mr. Krieger?
Yes, through the chair. Mr. Sterling, thanks for coming down this evening. A couple of questions for you on, I guess the first question goes to the concern you raised about Cobblestone Hill Road and that being a public easement. I think that was one of your comments.
Right.
What's wrong with there's a condition that's before us recommended by the staff that says something about dedicating a 30-foot wide temporary public use easement for the connection. That's referencing this Cobblestone Hill Road. Is that not sufficient for the community council's concerns, or what's the problem with that?
I think what we're concerned with is the time frame. 156 is going to be a real challenge to build. It's going to cost a lot of money, and so when is that going to happen? So we're looking for something a little more permanent than a temporary easement. If and when 156 is developed further up the hill, at that time, then this easement could be taken away.
Doesn't the plat note on this current, most recently handed out set of conditions says that the temporary public use easement shall be automatically vacated upon construction of the extension of East 156 or other suitable connection.
Right.
So if I'm reading that right, if it's not vacated until then it would remain in place until then.
Right.
So
if that's strong enough wording, then we'd be satisfied with that.
Through the chair, if I can continue a couple other questions. And this, I think, also goes back to Ms. Willis's question about drainage plans. I think both speakers asked us to add a condition that seemed to suggest that no permits or that nothing be permitted to be constructed on the plat until there's a positive proof that there's not going to be any drainage problems or erosion problems resulting from that.
Right.
Well, the current conditions do address requirements to the developer to deal with drainage and erosion. So I guess my question to you is, how does that fall short of what you would like to see?
Well, it goes on a lot-by-lot basis, I would say, that each lot needs its own drainage plan. If you look up at other subdivisions in that area, or single lots, there's been massive failures at Prominence Point, across from Golden View Middle School, and it's because of not enough attention or poor engineering, poor construction efforts. So it really needs, on these lots, more on the south side of Little Water Creek than the north side, it needs a lot-by-lot situation. You'll see some of those lots have wetlands, green arid wetlands that are very, very wet. You get the same problems with mud flows with any disturbance of that ground. Where that leach field area is on Lot 8, I believe, how are they going to build that lot? How are they going to put all those leach fields in? That's a clear cut, and start digging down to put in 5 leach fields with several additional spots for future leach fields. So it's a lot by lot drainage plan to prevent problems for the neighboring lots. And so that's what we were looking for there.
I understand your comment. Just if I can follow up on that, the current condition says that the developer is supposed to submit a grading and drainage plan to resolve the need for drainage easements, plural, and drainage improvements, and to demonstrate that all post-development drainage patterns will not adversely impact adjacent properties or rights-of-way. Now, that might not be strong enough, but I guess I need more guidance from somebody as to why that isn't strong enough to get you where you want to be on a lot-by-lot basis.
Well, and isn't that a building department requirement to understand what the drainage pattern will be on these lots?
Through the chair, that could be, and if that's the case, why would we micromanage it to put that into the condition?
Well, what we're trying to overcome is problems that have happened in other areas of that part of the hillside. And so we're requesting that, strong language be put in as conditions so that people think about what they're doing before they go out there to start cutting trees down and making house lots.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Sterling? Taylor?
Thank you.
Oh,
Actually,
wait,
I had a question.
We have a question. Ms. Taylor.
You had mentioned a concern about maintenance. Who currently maintains Cobblestone Hill and East 156th in that area?
It's actually maintained by the homeowners that live along there. The Wills, Mary Kay, Greg Frostberg. So they jointly come together and do the snow plowing, pay for the snow plowing together, and every once in a while you see a dozer up there when it gets real bad. So jointly together they've been working on it, and so they take care of it themselves. So it's not part of the rural road system. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Sterling.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to testify?
See that. Good evening. My name is Dana Vlad. I live uphill Cobblestone Hill Road.
Could you
I'm one of
your last name, please?
WLAD.
Thank you.
I am one of the residents that currently experiences the luge run on a daily basis, which actually is not a large price to pay for being on this piece of property. We really, really appreciate the work of staff and the design team. That's a great improvement over what we've seen last time, so thank you very much. There's a couple items we would like to also point out with regard to the proposed changes to cobblestone. Adequate signage will need to be provided at those intersections. I assume that the developer would then include cobblestone as part of their access into the lots. Additional parking needs to be required for the uphill residents. There are times of the year that we cannot get uphill and we need that parking. I believe I saw that somewhere in PM&E standards that based on an above 10% slope, we need to provide some additional parking. Snow storage will have to be something that we, to come to some sort of an agreement with. The only concern I would have about the solution, and I really don't know that there's anything better than this, we are now adding additional vehicles onto a slope that isn't safe. As Tony said, it's a challenging site, or that road, portion of road, as well as East 156 up to that point. With the steep slopes, it's very difficult to start introducing more traffic. I think what you're hearing on behalf of the neighbors is we see issues that are already unacceptable without making any changes to the area. And so I think you're coming into a situation where the neighbors are already shell-shocked, and the best we can think is the worst. based on what we're experiencing day to day. East 156 down to Golden View already glaciates at a regular pace, and additional traffic, I assume there's going to be accidents, incidents such as that, so we'll just have to pay close attention. If there is any way to try and correct any of those slope issues, I certainly hope that staff would explore that with the design team. And I would concur with the neighbors and all of the experiences that they've seen to date with regard to the drainage, and hope that not only the design team but staff will also pay extra attention to the site and to what is being proposed, and ensuring that our drainage is not sacrificed in the area and down below the development. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms.
Blood?
Blood.
Through the chair, the comment on parking, what do you guys do now?
Hoof it. You know, a couple of weeks ago, that was very much what was happening. I happen to have small children, so chains are a way of life. But for the other neighbors, they park at the bottom and hike up. It is that extreme.
And there's enough area right now currently on 156 for parking?
For approximately 3 vehicles, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Krieger, did you have a question? No? Any other questions? Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Good evening, Madam Chair and Board. My name is Greg Frostberg, and my wife and I live up Cobblestone Hill Road. We've lived there about 23 years, so we're quite familiar with the road and the conditions there. We took a couple pictures at noon today, which might augment some of what Ms. Vlad mentioned. This photograph's taken partway up 156. Mr. Sterling's house that he mentioned is just to the right in this photograph. This is the intersection of Cobblestone and 156, so you're looking up to the access to Cobblestone Hill. It's quite steep right now, and I think, as Mr. Hoffman mentioned, we would hope that through the improvements that this slope would be mitigated in some way. There's a side angle view of it. You can see it's quite steep. This is looking from that slope towards the intersection of Evergreen and Robin Hood Roads. Ideally, it would be nice if the terminus of Cobblestone would align with Evergreen. Right now, it's a bit of a blind turn when you are coming down off of Cobblestone. And this is looking back down towards 156 from Cobblestone. This was the parking area that Ms. Vlad mentioned. There's a space there for about 3 cars. This is at the western end of Cobblestone. It's also our snow storage area for our private snow plower. That's another view looking towards the west. This is taken from Wills Way looking south across Cobblestone. You can see that it's quite steep. In some of the earlier plans, there was a consideration for actually terminating Cobblestone at this point and extending Wills Way to East 156. You can see the challenge in that there's really no spot to stop or accelerate up the hill. And, well, you can't quite see this, but we did a measurement on the slope there, and it was 15%, and I think that's what the design team has recognized. So I think just in conclusion, we're encouraging the kind of the improvements to Cobblestone Hill Road, and certainly the putting an easement in place to ensure our continued access. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Frostberg? Ms. Moses?
Through the chair, can you show me on maybe this plat or the map where the neighbors are parking and storing snow, and was that just something that's been passed on from homeowner to homeowner, that that's where this would all happen, or is there an official, I mean, I don't see anything on here that says parking and snow storage area for people that live up the hill. So I'm just trying to figure out where this is.
It occurs right, here's cobblestone, and that's the little transverse portion of cobblestone and the intersection with 156. It's right here at the very end, right at this location. And it's traditionally been used that way for as long as the road has been in place.
What is lot 8 on the plat?
Is that correct,
on
Tony?
petitioner's property, lot 8?
It would be, yeah, this one here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Frostberg?
Yeah. It's right here.
Thank
right
you.
in the corner.
Anyone else wishing to testify on the Creekview Estates?
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Don McClintock. I'm here as an attorney on behalf of the Association of Owners who currently maintain and use Copper Hill Stone Road. I'd like to join Ms. Loud's comments. Much I have to say, I don't have to say, because of the vast improvements to the conditions that have been presented by staff and agreed to by the petitioner. I do have a few questions on those. Before I go into those, though, just some background. Copper Hill Stone Road is a road by prescriptive use. It's a bit of old Anchorage. The homesteader used the road for decades. Other people use the road. It's the only way to get uphill. So there's a right of public to use the road. It's not defined. It's defined by historical use. Those rights include the historical uses of parking, the snow storage, and the travel. So recognizing that, as these new conditions do, is a great plus. There's a technical problem in how that gets vacated. I'll address at the end of the comments. But I think it's important that we clarify exactly what we mean when we improve the existing travel way. First of all, I think it's obvious, probably to staff, that we're talking about residential standards. This isn't a driveway standard. It's going to be a residential road standard. I actually, since I don't have my Title 21, don't know if they're going to do it to suburban or rural standards, which will make a big difference in terms of how the profile of the road looks. So I think that's important because those address issues like snow storage, drainage, and so forth. So that's a question that should be asked. But the more significant one is, historically, this has been maintained by the uphill owners who use it. It will now have 3 other adjoining lots on it, other users, and the conditions do require an association to be formed. It doesn't mention, though, that they should contribute to the maintenance of the improved Cobble Hill Stone Road. I think that should be made a requirement. I would like to note a technical omission that's, I think, the Board of Adjustment, certainly as I learned since my position was overruled, that they do require that covenants and conditions and deed restrictions be presented to this board at the time of approval, and there is nothing in the packet. There's important things to address with those covenants because you have a very important and very generous 80-foot setback from Rabbit Creek Road, but no real descriptions on the restrictions on the landowners in that area. As I said, the common expense for maintenance needs to be addressed, and there's any number of mutual driveway easements and things that covenants typically provide guidance for to future owners. So that really should be done. I would recommend that you condition your approval to those covenants being brought back to the board with an opportunity for the public to comment on them because they do affect their neighbors who are also using the road. The technical point is on vacation. There is no right-of-way vacation in front of the board. So the procedure hasn't been followed, and I would suggest, if I could just finish this one point, that technically the automatic vacation is incorrect. It should be eligible for vacation when they extend it, because otherwise you have this legal mystery of a prescriptive easement with a public use easement that just goes away without the process being followed. It's, I think, a way just to avoid a legal problem in the future. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. McClintock?
I had a couple. Covered a lot of ground there, Mr. McClintock, in a fairly short period of time. And I may not be able to follow up on all the points that you made, but I think the first one I gathered was that you thought that condition 13B should say municipal residential standards, as opposed to currently saying municipal standards, expecting that by saying residential standards, it'll bring to bear more clearly the standards that the homeowners hope to see for Cobblestone Hill Road improvements. Did I get that right?
Yes, I would defer to staff as the actual description. I think it's important both to the public and to clarity the future exactly what standards we mean, because there's a municipal standard for various types of roads or driveways, and I just think it's important to have that condition set out in these conditions of approval. I think it's suburban, but Mr. Kiefer would be able to correct me or clarify that, I'm sure, through the chair. But I do think it should be clarified.
Okay. I think the next point you made was that maintenance should be shared by the new lot owners in the homeowners association that's being formed.
That's correct. At least lots, I believe it's 6, 7, and 8, if I remember the lots adjoining Cobblestone Hill Road. For some reason, the petitioner has chosen to give them a separate driveway easement. I imagine with this change in plan, they would want to use Cobblestone Road for access. Why maintain extra driveway if you don't have to? But in any event, they should. They are going to be traffic. They're going to have visitors who are going to traffic on the road. They should contribute to its maintenance, yes.
So paragraph 15 of the current conditions addresses the formation of the homeowners association. Can you suggest language that might fit in that paragraph that would address the concern that you've raised?
I would propose that there be a new 15E. This is on of course, the newly numbered and revised department recommendation, that the covenants provide for contribution by, and again, I'll be correct if I've got the lots wrong, but I believe it's lots 6, 7, and 8 to the maintenance, upkeep, and snow removal of the improved Cobblestone Road.
So these would be covenants in the homeowners document, in the homeowners association plan, right?
Yes. And what I would envision is that they would actually coordinate those efforts with the existing 5 families who maintain it.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
Mr. McClintock, I think you said that you thought that there was some legal requirement that covenants and conditions either, and I don't think I got this, either were addressed before this board or were included in plats when the plats were submitted to the board. I don't know that we've ever been presented with that suggestion before. Can you elaborate on that?
Through the Chair, Mr. Krieger, this is either the burden or whatever of historical memory. In the Kincaid State's long series of appeals that went back and forth, the very first appeal that was taken to the Board of Adjustment raised the issue that AMC 2115.110, point B, point 4, point D, which is the long list of requirements that have to be submitted with an application preliminary plat. That section required, if proposed, copies of protected covenants, deed restrictions, or home association bylaws shall be submitted. The Board of Adjustment held in that case that meant it had to be submitted with the application packet, so they were available to be discussed at the public hearing, and it was actually remanded for that purpose, and there was a remand where the covenants and one other issue could be discussed. So at the time, the practice had been those were reviewed by staff after approval, but the Board of Adjustment ruled that it's something that should be available for public comment. In this case, regardless of where you fall on, I think it is appropriate because some of the covenants do affect the neighbors, and I think they have a valid interest in speaking to it, not just to the road, which of course is what I'm addressing, but also Rabbit Creek. The Rabbit Creek setbacks are of vital importance to the whole community, so I think there are other constituencies that might want to make sure that those are well expressed. And we don't want people growing gardens in the 85-foot setback. And it's sort of obvious, but that's why you have the legal documents to make sure that you can enforce that in the future.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? I'm sort of, I guess I'm confused is the word, because the conditions that have been suggested to us don't meet that standard, if in fact what you've described as a standard, because there aren't, there's no fine-tuning, if you will, of any covenants that are in these conditions. So if we went ahead and acted on this without the covenants that you suggested the Board of Adjustment required in that Kincaid Estates case, are we making some reversible error? Is that your position?
I think you would run that risk because, for one thing, if you accept our position that the adjoining homeowner should maintain improved Cobble Hill Stone Road, that is the traditional way to impose that obligation is through covenants. Bylaws can be changed by a vote of the majority of owners and so forth. So that is the traditional method of requiring. And also the condition, whether you use covenants, you could also use deed restrictions, but the code also requires that deed restrictions be presented. So it sort of doesn't matter which vehicle you use. And we don't know, actually, and the petitioner hasn't stated whether they plan on recording covenants against these lots or not. But if they don't, I think at least on this issue, they would have to at least do limited covenants.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Ms. Moses?
Through the chair. So you said you're here representing the association of the existing 5, I believe. So am I led to believe they're in a homeowners association with covenants, dues, restrictions, recorded?
Through the chair, Ms. Moses, it's another one of those great Anchorage creations, not unlike the one that I live in. It's an unincorporated association. They get together, they pool their money, they pool it for snow plowing, legal bills, but it's not imposed through covenants that way. No, it's voluntary. That is correct.
So do I understand your position, and correct me if I don't, that you'd like to see these 3 lots at minimum mandated, for a better word, by these covenants and a homeowners association tying them into dues and such to maintain this road. But what's going to prohibit the 5 existing folks from being exempted from that because they won't be part of this association? So ultimately, the burden would fall on these 3 lots if we proceeded with what you, or if this was to go forth with what you propose.
Well, for one thing, the only part that they would be required to contribute to would be from 156 to Wills Way. So if it happened that way, and I guess I can't say nothing's impossible, they would only be contributing to the maintenance of the road that's actually in front of their property. So I don't think that's an equitable result. But I guess I feel pretty comfortable that they'll be able to work it out just like the neighbors have been able to work it out in the past. There's no way, it's a different subdivision entirely.
Well, I guess, if I may, through the chair, I guess that's why I'm questioning your position so I can understand better. If it can continue to be worked out in a neighborly way, why is your position that this verbiage and review needs to be stronger if 8 can work it out in a neighborly way as well as 5? I'm missing part.
Through the chair, Ms. Moses, I guess it goes back to sort of the fundamental concept of when you come to ask for an entitlement. Currently this is an undeveloped piece of property. There's no reason for the homeowner to contribute. They're not being asked to contribute because they're not using the road in any way. When someone comes forward, asks for permission to plat, for the right to sell to unknown third parties in the future, part of, I think, the obligation that goes with that is, at least we would ask, that the message be carried that owning this lot carries with it an obligation to do your part to keep up this road, which now is, it's not like before when when 156 was going to be improved and it was the legal road. Now Cobblestone Hill Road is the recognized municipal access route until they fulfill the long-range plan and improve 156. So it's a reasonable request, and it's one that's, I think, pretty traditional in most developments. It's always difficult when you come into areas like this where you have old precedents and unwritten rules. You do have to modernize, but again, I think it's a reasonable requirement, and it's one that it's far more equitable than having the homeowners move in, develop, and just shrug their shoulders and say, I don't really need to contribute to that, and you can't do anything about it.
If I may, one more question through the chair. To the best of your knowledge, do the existing 5, if one of them were to put their property up for sale, there would be, through my knowledge of my daily work, there would be nothing binding the new homeowner of one of these existing properties from contributing. And I guess the point and the question, maybe you can clarify for me, I'm kind of getting the impression from your statements that we're looking to bind these new lots to things that the existing ones aren't, even though this road will be used for everybody. Because I can't imagine, unless, please correct me, that these existing homes have something recorded that the new homeowner will pay for roads.
Well, there is a solution through the chair, Ms. Moses. If that's your concern, is you can change the condition to that the owners of 6, 7, or 8 shall enter into an agreement with the owners of, I'm sorry, I can't give their legal descriptions, for maintenance and upkeep of the road, and I assume that would be acceptable too.
Mr. Clark?
Through the chair, I'm assuming that this proposed change in Cobblestone Hill roads is going to be an improvement. It certainly is going to be an improvement in that there won't be a right-angle turn there. Would you say that that's correct?
Through the chair, Mr. Clark. Actually, that was the question I raised, because I don't know what standards are going to improve it to.
I'm not talking about standards. I'm just saying it already appears to me that this is going to be an improvement over what they have.
Again, if it was just improved to driveway standards, that wouldn't necessarily be true. I think the intent is to do better, but I can't quantify or suggest how much better that is until we know.
And I understand that. And through the chair, the question I have is, are the people that are uphill from this, are they going to be contributing to this improvement at all?
To the improvement of Cobblestone Road? Through Chair, Mr. Clark, the arrangement that was reached between PM&E and the petitioner was they were going to be exempted from the code requirement of improving 156 as the adjoining unimproved right-of-way in return for improving Cobblestone Road as the alternative access that 156 would have served. I see absolutely no reason why the adjoining landowners would be asked to contribute to the cost of that capital construction. I mean, it would be fairly extraordinary under your platting procedures to go to adjoining neighbors as a developer and ask them to contribute to the roads that you're required to build.
Well, I understand, but they would be only required to build the road. Regardless of that, that's not the point here. The point is that they're going to be getting an improved road anyway, it appears to me, out of this.
That is, well, yes. I mean, that is the goal. That is the hope, that it will be a better, safer road. And that would have been the purpose of improving 156. Originally, the proposal was to improve 156 to municipal standards and make a transition to Cobblestone Road. That was the position of petitioner that we knew about until yesterday. The problem we always had with that is it was not a safe transition. So the current standard is much better than what the original proposal was. Hopefully Cobblestone Road will be a better road and everyone will be better served by it. And that's a good thing, because the thing to remember, and let me know, I usually stand here, and Mr. Krieger, I think, is only I've been before of this body, but I'm here usually in front of developers. This is the only association I've ever stepped in front of on an issue. And I have never had the nerve to suggest that adjoining neighbors should contribute to improvements that a developer is required to make under the code.
Well, I wasn't suggesting that. I was just asking a question.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Penn?
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify?
Madam Chair and members, I'm Heather Sterling. I live on the southeast corner of 156th and Golden View, and I've been there for 25 years. And many of the neighbors have clearly spoken about the drainage issues, including Mr. Fosberg's pictures. Now, if he would have had pictures from last week when we didn't have any snow, there would have been a lot of glaciation. In fact, the people who built the road back about 1950, they call that road Glacier Hill. It's not 156. It's a very serious issue, and so I just kind of want to put an exclamation point here. We actually heat our cross pipe, our driveway pipe, and even sometimes it still freezes over, and the neighbor uphill from us often has to come and park in our driveway. It's a very difficult hill. I'm concerned about the driveways coming in from these new lots onto 156. This is going to be difficult going through these wetlands, and it's going to be very difficult to get those done correctly. Another issue is the project management and engineering comments. I'm not sure street lighting. Is that required? I hope not, because we who have been living there, we live up there. To be on the edge of the wilderness, not in a city. So we really enjoy the night sky, and hopefully we can get around having to put in street lights. So I'd really like to make notes on that. So, thank you.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Sterling? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify in the Creekview Estates case?
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Mike Mitchell. I'm the president of the board of the Anchorage Trails and Greenways Coalition. I'm here to speak briefly in support of the inclusion of the trail easement in the 85-foot setback area. That is consistent with the policies of the 2020 comprehensive plan as indicated on page 16 of the report, and it is very important to the members of our organization to both provide for neighborhood trail easements and provide for the interconnectivity between those easements, especially in this instance where there's already an easement on an adjoining parcel. It's not only consistent with the comprehensive plan, it just makes good sense to continue that easement and to provide for neighborhood trails. And we do appreciate the efforts both of the municipal staff and this body to make sure that that overarching goal of the comprehensive plan is implemented on a case-by-case basis as plats come up for approval. Curiously, on page 16 of the staff report, the Parks and Recreation Department's support appears to be a bit tepid for this, with a number of provisos on which their support appears to be conditioned. Hopefully I'm misunderstanding that, but in any event, we hope and trust that this body's inclusion of that easement will be taken as a directive to work out any remaining issues to be resolved regarding the specific placement of the trail within that setback. There does appear to us to be plenty of room within the 85-foot setback for a trail to be adequately constructed and to provide for that interconnectivity. We also support the suggestion of a previous speaker, I believe it was a representative of the Community Council, to provide for
access to that trail easement along a cul-de-sac. Again, it's important not only to have the interconnectivity between along neighborhood trails, but to have periodic access to those neighborhood trails, and it looks like there's a good opportunity to provide that access route here. And finally, we also support the recommendation that a notation be included on each lot plat to make sure that the trail easement becomes legally enforceable as to each plat. So thank you for your time.
Are there any questions of Mr. Mitchell? Mr. Krieger. Mr. Mitchell, we have a question.
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. One of the current conditions, condition number 7 now says, addresses the trail concern. Have you had a chance to look at that, and is that different than what you expected to see as far as protecting the planned trail easement for on that 85-foot setback?
So I'm not familiar with that particular condition. I've been looking at the overall recommendations.
It's in the packet. Well, you may find it back in page 21 of your packet, if you got a packet. If you didn't, I can share it with you what it says.
Page 21 of the staff report.
Yes.
Am I reading that correctly? The 25-foot stream protection.
Yeah. Now it's number 7 in the revised ones that we got this afternoon, but number 8 is the one that I think addresses your concern.
Yes, if that's the one that reads resolving with the non-motorized trail coordinator. Yes, that appears acceptable. I'm assuming that would be taken as a direction to make good faith efforts to resolve the remaining issues, and yes, I think that is acceptable.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify in the Creekview Estates case?
Good evening. My name is Mary Carey. I live also on Lakeview Circle, but my focus tonight is trails and trail connectivity. I would maybe like to have a condition change to the plat notes, unless it's somewhere else in the plat notes or conditions that the dedication of a trail easement and maybe added to condition number 7. There's also was a suggestion that we look at trail connectivity from Wills Way, the circle or the cul-de-sac on Wills Way. The topography there is extremely steep, and I know this isn't part of the plat right now, but there is a discussion among the group of neighbors up above that area off of Blairview Circle, maybe one possibility to consider a trail easement or access there in the future that we may consider as a neighborhood to dedicate for connectivity. There are also other places of unsubdivided land that will be developed in the future that may have grades that are more suitable for the transitioning. So I'd like to just bring that to your attention. We do have the capability and may be better places for connectivity to this trail easement. So that concludes my testimony.
Are there any questions of Mr. Krieger?
I don't want to.
Well, that's fine.
I'm still with you on this trail thing. You made reference to paragraph 7 of the condition. What is it that you were hoping you would see there that you're not seeing?
I didn't see that ultimately there would be a trail dedication and easement, a dedication of the easement.
Well, I think that's a good point, because I was wondering about that myself. I can't find on the...
we have the opportunity here.
I don't see where there's a plat note saying there's going to be a trail here, and I don't see anything shown on the... Maybe it's in the colored version and not in the black and white version, but I don't see anything on the plat showing the existence of this easement, and I don't see a plat note referring to a dedication of an easement. Well, I do see where the condition says you're going to resolve the width and alignment of a trail easement. So I guess the question would be, is that enough to ensure that there is a trail easement, or is that doesn't get us far enough?
I leave that up to the board. Our intent would be is that we have an opportunity for long-term connectivity from Golden View School to Bear Valley in Section 36. And I would hope that this action, the board would lend to the ability to make sure this easement is put in that connects to already existing easements that are to the east of this development.
What it says, through the chair, what it says at this point is that it's supposed to connect the public Greenbelt Trail Corridor in Goodvina subdivision, addition number 1. That's what it says. North side of Rabbit Creek that connects to Goodvina subdivision. So I guess my point is, if it doesn't get you where you want to be, then you need to tell us what's wrong with it and what more should be there.
Through the chair, a question of staff. Will this have provisions for the easement being dedicated as constructed? I mean, as proposed?
Through the chair, this is the condition to get the easement, and the width and the alignment has to be resolved with the non-motorized trails coordinator. The public Greenbelt Trail Corridor in Goodvina subdivision number 1 is on the north side of Rabbit Creek. And that's where the legal connectivity is, on the north side of Rabbit Creek.
So are you okay with that, then?
I defer to the action of the Platting Board.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Carey? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? Creekview Estates, S11680-2.
Yes, good evening. Donna Maxwell, and I own and have Goodvina, Lot 1, that actually you were just talking about with the easement to the north, which I wasn't really aware of. I haven't spent a lot of time with this. I'm not actually, it doesn't affect me as much, but I think that I'm pleased with how it's coming along and how I've been keeping track of the changes that are very wonderful. When I purchased this land, I purchased it for my daughter so she could live in a community that wasn't so populated due to brain injury at a very young age. So I've developed it. And some of the issues that were addressed tonight are very real as to digging up this land. I've worked for Wilder for 12 years, and that is my field. I'm an operator out of the union, and there is a lot of artesian water that seeps out of this land, and I am much higher than the subdivision that they are developing. So I am very pleased that it's all 9 bigger lots. I'm aware of the Golden View Rabbit Creek to the north, as you head down Rabbit Creek, where they put an above septic system due to very, very wetlands. I pay taxes on 2.5 acres, and I only have access to probably 1 acre of my land. The rest is all wetlands. And it is a very tight community with what their concerns are with this land, because when I developed, I was shut down numerous times for just clearing dead trees. So it's a real hard situation. I have traveled on what was discussed tonight, the other side of the creek, and I went up that road to visit my daughter's girlfriend and almost slid off the hill. So this was just a driveway above these lots that are being put in, and I've never returned, and that was 8 years ago. So it is very bad, as they discuss. After listening tonight, it's very, very, I would like to see this develop, because if a good community comes out of it, it would benefit my daughter in her future living there by herself. It's too bad they couldn't move the right-of-way on the other side of the creek because it's not developed and it's just such a steep slope. That would probably be my only concern at this moment. But other than that, I'm very pleased to be here and listen. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Maxwell? Mr. Krieger, did you have a question?
No. Do I?
Anyone else wishing to testify?
Good evening. My name is Nancy Pease, and I grew up about a mile away from this site. And Cobblestone Hill is a favorite training run precisely because it is so steep. I have more recent knowledge of this site, having heard a substantially different plat with the Planning and Zoning Commission in October, but I do want to say that I am here on my own behalf. I'm very glad that since that earlier case, staff have walked this parcel and reviewed policies, and they now recommend a public trail easement on the north side of the creek, and I strongly support that position. Speaking tonight to ensure that you know of the important opportunity that represents and the ample policies that support platting a pedestrian easement and possibly a conservation easement along Little Rabbit Creek in this subdivision. In October, the applicant offered a conservation easement to be held by the municipality, and the Planning and Zoning Commission was very receptive to that. I don't know if that would still be the position of the applicant. The main opportunity here is to connect a major focus of community activity at Golden View Middle School with what's up the hill, Bear Valley, Stork Park, and if you're not aware of it, Section 36, which is over 600 acres, and it's just now getting a master plan to become a community park. So this would be a major linear connection. Your packet on page 15 and 16 shows a 25-year history of intentions to create a linear green belt and trail along parts of Little Rabbit Creek. Sometimes this specific section through this subdivision area was proposed for the Greenbelt Trail, and sometimes 156th was shown as the route. But the intent for a linear Greenbelt style trail has not wavered. And even in the current parks plan, which shows part of the alignment along 156th, is called the Greenbelt Scenic Trail. So I think the intent of the quality of trail is clear there. And it's important again to emphasize that there are existing platted greenbelt and trail easements just upstream in the Goodvina subdivision, so this would connect to existing segments and make them usable. As far as current plans that are in support, the 2005 Long-Range Transportation Plan did call for a multi-use trail project along Little Rabbit Creek. The 2006 Parks Plan, which I mentioned briefly, does talk about, on page 90, continuing to acquire, enhance, and develop greenbelts along several creeks, including Little Rabbit Creek is listed by name. And again, the map in that plan shows that the connection between Golden View on up to the school and the new community park should be a greenbelt scenic type trail. Finally, I wanted to mention that on the draft Hillside District Plan, which came out to the public in October, it's proposed that there be a primary greenbelt trail, pedestrian trail, along the creek through this subdivision. I know that's a draft plan, but it has been subject of public discussion for over 18 months, I want to say 2 years with public hearings, so this is an emerging idea. And if I may, I just wanted to briefly touch on the connection that was mentioned east and north-south. Whereas I'm at the end of my time.
Please ask. Continue.
Ms. Nancy, would you please, through the chair, would you please continue?
Thank you. The area-wide trails plan policies 7 and 8. I know you've memorized comp plan policies 13 and 55, but policy 7 in the area-wide trails plan says that the municipality of Anchorage shall actively pursue the dedication of rights of way and easements to facilitate access to and continuity within the system of trails, parks, greenbelts, and open spaces. And then policy statement number 8 in the ATP says that in the subdivision process, the municipality shall require provisions for trails and walkways, including direct access to adjoining trails when these trails are part of this plan and are not located in a dedicated easement or right-of-way. So I think that supports the idea that rather than just vacating Willis Way or vacating the cul-de-sac end of it, there should be a pedestrian easement that continues on north to the north side of the creek so that the neighborhoods around 156th and the houses that are on the south side of the creek will have direct access within this subdivision to the proposed trail easement on the north side of the creek. So that could possibly be handled in condition 5, which addresses Willis Way, or it could be a new condition to reserve a pedestrian easement north-south from the southern part of the subdivision on 156th to the proposed north side trail. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of Ms. Peace?
Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members. My name is Robert Shipley, and I'm here representing the Anchorage Waterways Council. We've been involved with creeks and wetlands here in Anchorage area for about 18 years. We've been following the development of this proposal for a few months, and we're pleased, appreciate the evolution of the plan to the point it is now, tonight, especially with regard to the waterways and wetlands protection. I have a couple of general comments and then 2 or 3 specific comments addressing the staff analysis that was submitted to all of us. In general, we're concerned about the cumulative effects of these developments up on the hillside. Any one of the strict requirements for construction and development sound kind of restrictive, but eventually you'll have dozens and dozens of developments, and they all cumulatively contribute to water quality, because everything runs downhill thanks to gravity, and so each specific development seems to, we should require its own controls of the potential contaminants and flooding and so forth that might occur on their respective sites. We'd like to see the minimization of impervious surface development in many of these subdivisions. Impervious, I'm talking about square footage of roof areas, paved driveways, maybe tennis courts, that type of thing, and in preference have gravel driveways, undisturbed forest soils, minimal site footprint, disturbed footprint, that type of thing. This would help absorb any runoff water and help control the need for treating before runoff into the creeks. On page 2 of the staff plans on paragraph D, we talk about demonstrate that drainage patterns will not adversely impact adjacent properties or rights of way. We'd like to add or Little Rabbit Creek, because eventually all that water that's collected on the development has to go somewhere, and if it's not treated before it goes to Rabbit Creek, for example, which has salmon run in the lower parts, could have some environmental impacts. And in reference to a conservation easement earlier, we would support that because that protects the entire riparian area along any of these creeks and drainage ways and wetlands, so that those riparian areas, as you know, serve as filters for any runoff waters before it reaches the creeks and wetlands themselves. There's a reference to a report, a water study on the proposed development area, and it seems like that there's lots of water running through, over, and under the surface through that area, and I'm concerned with the proposed leach fields that hopefully that the soil testing has been done very, very thoroughly, so that it's not going to have some problems with the groundwater contamination in the future. And I guess finally on the latter 2 or 3 pages where it talks about plat notes, it would be interesting to, like on number 12B on page 21, to add at the end of that paragraph not only have the plan approvals, but to minimize, again, the impervious surface construction on the lots. And on lastly, page 23, 17K, clear at the bottom. statement that should not obstruct, impede, or alter approved drainage facilities in a way that will adversely impact adjacent properties or rights of way or creeks. Because all that's intercepted and treated on the properties, again, has to be directed somewhere. And it should be through, whether it's grassy swales or whatever the current technology in treating the runoff water and collecting the sediment before it reaches the creeks. That's all I have. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Shipley?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? The Creekview Estates case. Anyone at all? Okay, then we can hear from the petitioner. You have 4 minutes and 15 seconds for rebuttal.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, I'm going to defer any questions you have or responses to the drainage and engineering to Mr. Renier. I do want to address Mr. McClintock's discussion on the homeowner's documents and the requirement to submit them as part of the plat and how that was adjudicated at the Board of Adjustments for Sand Lake. There were a lot of other issues with those homeowner associations, and the homeowner association that the municipality is asking us to form for this development is strictly for the assurances that the septic systems are maintained and that accesses to them are maintained and that they are kept in an operable state. And this is above and beyond the other regulations that on-site has on them. So it's a double guarantee that there'll be another mechanism to maintain them if on-site can't regulate them or if the homeowners can't maintain them themselves. But it's a double guarantee, I guess, and that's the only thing that we were proposing in the homeowners' documents. Now, as far and we defer to staff and their recommendation that they review the homeowners' documents. We're prepared to do that, and we believe that that's the proper route to go, and that's the way we've handled it before. There were other issues with Sand Lake, I believe, that led to that overturn. Now, about the homeowners' documents and maintenance of the road. Now, what's being suggested is that these 3 lots that are going to use well, Mrs. Moses was talking about anyway, the lots that are going to be fronting on there, if they're 3 or 5, I guess it's going to be 3, that will utilize that. Trying to have as homeowner document kind of regulation or maintenance fee applied only to them when there's no mechanism to bring in the uphill owners into this agreement seems awfully problematic, and it just seems completely out of whack what I know about fairness. Right now you only have 4 or 5 homeowners. As Mrs. Moses pointed out, if one of those people moves or sells, who's to say that person's going to participate? It's been stated that, well, they all agree to and they all know that they have to, and they do that, they maintain it. Well, there's nothing binding them to that. And what about if there's 4 or 5 new homeowners? What binds them to the same maintenance level that you're trying to put on us? It just doesn't seem appropriate, and it seems really problematic. I mean, if you can bring all the uphill homeowners and lot owners and potential homeowners into this association, and they all agree to do it, that seems a lot more fair, but I don't see a mechanism to do that here, and I don't think it's appropriate. So I think I've stated my case on the CC&Rs and what we feel our stance is on that. I'm going to let Dave Renier talk about some of the erosion problems and questions that have come up, because they are real important.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Yes.
One of the speakers suggested that there should be some attention given to signage and parking and snow storage.
Absolutely. Oh, snow storage. Yeah.
Can you comment on those 3?
Signage is actually is an subdivision agreement in item 13F, installation of traffic control devices. That's signage. Talking about snow storage, I don't necessarily, while we're talking about prescriptive use of travel over that road, I don't necessarily agree that there's a prescriptive use of snow storage on the private property, and that
that's a proper place to put it. I don't think, snow storage has been handled in the past, and I don't think that there's a mechanism to address it any better than it has been handled now. The snow storage isn't going to change, and we're not asking to change the maintenance level of the road as to what it is now. It would undoubtedly improve, because the road condition will improve. But if you look at those photos, it didn't really look to me like there was a lot of plowing going on. And there's no, we're talking about maintenance of the road. We'd love to see an area-wide maintenance agreement go in place so everybody could have better maintenance of the road. The luge run wouldn't be so bad. Maybe there'd be better sanding, but that doesn't happen. That's not going to happen. There's no mechanism here to do that. Snow storage, road maintenance are kind of the same thing in this regard, I believe.
And what about parking?
Parking. Let's talk about parking. In discussion with the municipality, we are, to alleviate the parking problem, we are prepared to offer a little additional parking. And to construct as part of the road, improvements of Cobblestone Road inside Wills Way. And this is another area that we've heard that people park because they can't get up this 15% grade. We'll go ahead and construct a pullout for 4 or 5 cars in the right-of-way as part of our improvements, and that can be addressed as part of the improvements and subdivision agreement for those improvements. Or the development plan, I guess you call it. And we will do that as part of this to alleviate that parking concern, and maybe that can be used for some snow storage too.
Thank you. I had one other question, if I can.
Sure.
Through the chair. I think Mr. McClintock was suggesting that condition 13B should refer not just to municipal standards, but should fine-tune that to either municipal residential or municipal suburban standards. Mm-hmm. Do you have any comment on that?
I actually, we've talked about this with staff, and I frankly believe that 13B and 13A are worded so the staff has enough handle to create, to make sure that we improve it to the proper standards. They've never not allowed us to improve it to the right standards before we allow the subdivision plat to be recorded. I don't see why they would now, why additional wordage is to be put in there, and I believe that's what the staff is for.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
Mr. Grenier is going to talk about the drainage things that came up.
Madam Chair. You have a minute. 1 minute.
My name is Dave Grenier, Triad Engineering. The issue of drainage came up was significantly tonight, and basically the conditions that we have, 11A and B, as well as 14, address this, in our opinion, adequately. The staff, as far as PM&E is concerned, this is a significant, and it's an issue that they take a lot of effort in reviewing, and the standards are very strict. The grading plan will address each individual lot as to how the drainage will occur on that. So what has evolved over the last several years is the drainage plan as it relates to individual lots. This now goes not only from the engineering side but down to building safety so that they are integrated. And so when a building permit is issued, that is addressed. And I have a comment on snow storage, if I may.
Mr. Clark.
Yes. What will occur when cobblestone is upgraded to municipal standards, and standards are addressed in Title 21 as it relates to the zoning. So based on R9 zoning, there are specific requirements as far as road improvements. So what will happen is the road will be wide enough to where the snow will be stored adjacent to the improved way, and that's what happens now. It's not like a parking lot where you're pushing and storing snow. This type of a road will the storage, when there are improvements to it, will allow for storage adjacent to it.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Grenier or Mr. Hoffman? Ms. Plunkett?
Through the chair, I had another question regarding the parking. When you were talking about the parking on Wills Way that you were looking at adding, I think the current parking is at the other end, is closer to 156. Are you maintaining both of them? Is that what you meant by additional, or?
No, it's not. We're talking about adding this. We're not talking about maintaining new parking anywhere else.
And the logic behind that is that that's within a public right-of-way now, and it gives ample room to do it rather than on a private within a private property.
Any other questions for Mr. Grenier or Mr. Hoffman? I have a question. It was brought up a couple of times tonight about having an access from Wills Way to the north side of the creek to connect up with the...
Through the chair, I'm glad you brought that up. We have no problem with the trail easement. It wasn't shown on the original plat because it's not something we envisioned in being built. If the municipality wants to build one in this 85-foot area, that's fine. We have no problem with that trail easement. If the board wants to put a stipulation for a trail easement here, and this 50 to 80% grade down into the north side of Rattle Creek, that's fine. I don't see why we would object to it. I would like to see the municipality build it.
It sort of comes out on the wrong side of the creek, too, doesn't it?
Yeah. But we don't have an objection to it. We see it doesn't impact the lots, the usable area of the lots. We have no objection to it.
Did you have another question, Ms. Plum? All righty then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that closes the public hearing. Are there any questions of staff? Does anyone have any questions of staff? Okay, then I guess I would entertain a positive motion. Starting with the vacation. Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, could you turn on your mic?
Sorry about that. I thought it was on. In the case of S-11680-2, I move for approval of the request to vacate the Willis Way cul-de-sac bulb.
Is there a second? Mr. Krieger, would you speak to your motion, please, Mr. Clark?
I intend to support the motion. I believe the criteria have been met.
Is there any other discussion on the vacation? Is there any opposition to the vacation? Seeing none, the vacation is approved. Moving on to the variance.
In the case of S-11680-2, I move for approval of the variance request from AMC 21.80.300.D, 1-to-3 lot width to depth ratio.
And Mr. Roll is the second. Could you speak to your motion, Mr. Clark?
I intend to support the motion. I believe the criteria has been met.
Is there any other discussion on the variance? Is there any opposition to the variance? Seeing none, the variance is approved. And moving on to the plat.
In the case of S-11680-2 Creekview Estates, I move for approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to the conditions 1 through 18, as put forth in our revised packet.
Is there a second? Ms. Moses seconds. Mr. Clark, would you speak to your motion?
I intend to support the motion. I'm not sure whether or not we need to do anything with the cul-de-sac, but I intend to support the motion the way it is at the moment.
Any discussion?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Krieger?
I have some concerns with the approval of the conditions as written, and I would suggest a couple friendly amendments. I think they're friendly.
You could just pose them as amendments.
I'll pose them as amendments. I would amend the approval of the conditions at 2D2 to say description of the maximum allowed number of bedrooms, because I see where we're going to have to resolve that above, but I'd like to see that on the plat note, that the allowed number of bedrooms are shown there. On condition 7, I would propose an amendment to condition 7 that says dedicating a trail easement and then pick up the rest of the text as it's written. I would propose an amendment to 13 to add a subsection H, which says entering into written, it will say entering into written subdivision with PM&E. H, addressing parking on Willis Way. And then the final proposed amendment is to 16G, which says place the following notes on the plat. G, the temporary public use easement, and I would add the words created by this plat. And I think that would add those words, and otherwise the G continues as written. Those are the amendments that I would propose to the conditions.
Is there a second to these amendments? Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Speak to your amendments, Mr. Krieger.
Okay, taking them in order, I guess the first one's fairly trivial, maybe a housekeeping matter. The second one, amending 7, there was a lot of concern about whether or not there is a dedicated trail, and I guess it's, to the extent it's not obvious from number 7, this amendment would make it obvious that they will be dedicating a trail easement. I don't think that does any harm to the intent. With respect to 13H, the proposed amendment, it seems to me that seems to me on my breeze through to be the most appropriate place to incorporate that offer that the developers made to deal with parking on the Willis Way area, and I don't see, although we didn't hear from the public on that particular proposal, it seemed to be more reasonable than requiring parking to be made on the private lots down at the lower end of Cobblestone Road. There was discussion about whether or not this public use easement is going to go away automatically because there's some prior suggestion of a prescriptive easement resulting from prior use. And this just would clarify that all we're saying is that the one that's created by the plat goes away automatically. I think that may address that concern. And those were all all the amendments that I think are appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate to require covenants and conditions to be, at least it may be appropriate, but I'm not aware of any law at this point that requires the covenants and conditions to be set out in the preliminary plat, or at least discussed by this board. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment to the motion? Ms. Moses.
Madam Chair, and through the chair and the board, I guess I agree that their housekeeping I do have some concern on the parking one on Will's Way. I guess without knowing, I mean, the petitioner offered to do that, but there were no specifics. I'm hesitant to make it a requirement. I can't think of another subdivision, and I could be wrong, but in that area on the hillside where you're required to have public parking because existing homes may need to park, we're not talking about people that may live on the lots on the plat that we're working on tonight. We're talking about making parking for people outside of it. And so I guess I'm just hesitant without knowing more on the petitioner's behalf and maybe the public, as you mentioned. You know, they've already expressed they'd like to see parking, to add that one here. But otherwise, that's kind of my thought.
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Clark?
Well, I think that's an attempt by the developer to be a good neighbor, and he's offering it. I don't see any problem with doing that. I don't think it sets any precedent, and I don't see as we're doing any damage to anyone by agreeing to that.
Any other discussion? Mr. Krieger?
Yeah, on this parking issue, it may not be worded as artfully as it could be. I guess it's my thought was consistent with Mr. Clark, that if this is something the petitioner has offered and the residents of the adjacent properties have requested, I guess it would be my intent that PM&E would sort of intercede here and figure out what is an appropriate number of spaces, what's an appropriate accommodation that the petitioner is willing to make, and that they can work out without creating a precedent how this can be accommodated. So I guess I'm still okay with it.
Might I offer a suggestion that we take it out of the subdivision agreement paragraph and make it its own number and say resolve the need for?
I would think that would be a great suggestion if it's in order for me to comment on it. So is that an amendment to the amendment? Well, I have to make it. So I would amend my amendment to add a condition to delete the proposed amended 13H and add a condition 19 that says resolve with PM&E the need to establish parking in the public right-of-way on the south side of Willis Way.
And the second agrees.
Is there any other discussion on the amendments as they are now? Seeing none, is there any opposition to the amendments? Okay, so the amendments are now approved or incorporated into the main motion. And we're back to the main motion. Ms. Plunkett?
Did we also want to look at adding in an easement for the trail where the cul-de-sac has been vacated as an additional one as well?
Did you want to make the motion to add that?
Well, and I think I would make it, Mr. Krieger, yours was 19, so that would be a 20 then to create an easement, a trail easement to similar to the wording, and I think it was around 7 to resolve with the non-motorized trail coordinator in the vacated Wills Way cul-de-sac bulb. That would be my motion.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Did you get that? Mr. Clark? Okay, Mr. Clark. Any discussion?
I believe from listening to the public and I do believe from at least downtown, being able to go through Chester Creek the whole way, there's a lot of blessings to be able to have that creek go all the way through and be able to have some connectivity. So I would be in favor of adding that as a connection.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Krieger?
When I heard that discussed, I thought it might be a pretty good idea, and then your dialogue with the last speaker suggested that it's real steep down at the end of that vacated cul-de-sac, and it looks like it goes from the south to the north, to the south side of Rabbit Creek, and then it would, unless you got waders or something, it's going to stop there. So A, it's really steep, and B, it doesn't get up to the other side where I think there's supposed to be that 85-foot setback on the north side of Rabbit Creek. So that's why, I'm kind of a proponent of trails when they're appropriate too, but I don't know whether or not that's the right place to put it because of A, the steepness, whatever, and the lack of connectivity. I don't think it connects to anything. I could be wrong, but that's my concern about adding that as an amendment.
Mr. Clark, did you want to?
Yeah, I hear what Mr. Greger is saying, and I believe that one of the people that requested that said that also. However, as the developer points out, if they can build it, great, but it's not going to be in anybody's way any place, so that doesn't hurt us in any way or the subdivision in any way to agree with the public and have this put in.
Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to disagree with this one because I think that it isn't useful and it could potentially be harmful. So just with erosion down to the creek, with being on the wrong side of the creek, the only way that it would work to join up to the trail would be if there were a bridge, and then there's a problem with designing bridges, and it's expensive, and whether it would be built. And I think it was Ms. Carey that said that there are more appropriate places to access this trail than the end of Will's Way. One of them would be Golden View Drive. I mean, it's got to connect up to Golden View Drive, and it's not that far away. So I'm going to not be in favor of this amendment. And so I guess we need to vote. And a yes vote adds this amendment to the motion, and a no vote does not. Okay, so that amendment fails, and we're back to the main motion. Again, is there any further discussion on the motion as amended? Is there any opposition to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved and the plat is approved. So that brings us to the end of the new business portion of the agenda. Any persons to be heard? Reports? I don't have a report. Any board member comments? Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Or adjourn?